Thank you again. We're Typolectives. We're an online design school shaping the future of typography and design, and we're co-founded by Lin Yun and myself, Juan Villanueva. So we like to say that at Typolectives, we try to offer classes that go beyond traditional design education, including type design, lettering, and creative technology. And we work with faculty that bring respect, responsibility, criticality, and love to their practice. And obviously, we always love working with students who share those principles. Today is the second lecture of our full lecture series, where we invite new and established voices to share their stories, knowledge, and ideas with the community. These are some of the amazing people we're working with this fall. Last week, we heard from Lisa Juan talking about words of type, multilingual, and multiscriptural typography. The recording is already up on the website. Please check it out and support her work. And just to remind you that whether you're an academic or just curious about these topics, we try to make it as accessible as possible, covering from very introductory to very more deeper levels. So please check it out and send us your questions in advance if you have them. This is the whole series. We're really excited to talk today with Chris, and next week we'll be talking with Chiza about type design for African languages, and then we move all the way to the Philippines to talk about identity and typography over there, and wrapping up with North American Indigenous languages with Leo Vicente. With that, I'll pass the mic along to Ling to talk about our two new classes.
Yes, we're really excited to share a brand new in-person class with David, who is the co-founder of Noble Signs and the New York Sign Museum. So if you haven't heard about the New York Sign Museum, it's a really, really cool place. If you take this workshop, you'll get a closer look at the museum's archive of signage, type catalogs, and advertising ephemera from the 20th century, which is really cool. I mean, I've been in New York for a long time, but I do think like it's very interesting that archiving efforts for New York signs specifically, it seems like a very unique occurrence. So I was very interested in this like when I first found out because like wow I haven't seen like archive of New York City signs, although being in a big city they're everywhere. So go check it out regardless of whether you're taking the workshop or not. But if you do take the workshop, you'll get inspiration from all of these vernacular lettering. You'll get to sketch, letter, and digitize your own design into vector format. And to wrap it all off, we're offering a pay what you can option to make these classes more accessible. So even if the price seems prohibitive, like please apply for the what you can option.
Yeah, let
And
us know
if
how
you're
much
in
you can afford.
yes, yeah, and if you are in the local area, which is East New York, super highly encouraged to apply. All right.
Yeah, and one reminder about this class is that it's open to introductory to more advanced people. So no matter where you are, it's an amazing opportunity to get inspired by the letters in New York City. Now for our next class.
Yeah. There's a new online class with Kel from Overlap Type called Experimental Letter Forms. And this class is for everyone who want to push their work beyond the usual references. And each week you'll get to explore a tradition like graffiti, sign painting, or calligraphy. And so like by the end, you'll have original lettering pieces and maybe even a typeface concept. And of course, there's also a pay what you can option for this workshop. So definitely apply. And we just want everybody to be able to afford these classes. So that's what we want to stress.
Yeah, please check it out. I'm excited for this as well. So many techniques covered in such a brief period of time. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So here are some simple ways to support our mission. You can donate to our scholarship fund. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can follow us on social media and YouTube and the socials. And, it really, really helps us for everyone who spreads the word about our classes, events, and mission to all your friends and colleagues. We really, really appreciate it. And really, I really do mean it when every bit of support helps us keep programs like this running, along with all of the other, financial aid missions that we do. So thank you so much. Please spread the word. And with that, we wanted to get started with today's event. We're very, very excited to have our special guest, Chris Skillern. I'll introduce Sorry, I feel like I can't, like, my coffee is like too much there. Anyway, so Chris is a type designer and citizen of the Cherokee Nation based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where it is 90 degrees right now. He specializes in Latin and Cherokee type design. He is a graduate of the Type West program at the Letterform Archive and is the founder of Tulsi Type, an independent foundry. So if you are interested in warm, expressive, multi-script design, definitely go follow Tulsi Type on Instagram and all the places. We'll be dropping those links for you. And he has released Latin and Cherokee typefaces under the Tulsi Type banner, and also has collaborated with XYZ Type on custom projects for the London Stock Exchange Group and the brand new conference. And also, if you have ever seen Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings series, he also designed a custom typeface for the Cherokee language dub. So, that's a really exciting, fact that I didn't know. I was very excited. I was like, oh, okay, you have to like, I was like, what amazing, little tidbit to drop. And Chris has also led the Tipotique Cherokee Project, which is an initiative to design an ambitious new suite of syllabary fonts. And, like, Chris has been to all these amazing places, sharing all his enthusiasm and knowledge and expertise. And we are so excited to welcome Chris. Thank you so much, Chris. Please take it away from us.
Woohoo! Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Of course. And for everybody attending the webinar, if you have any questions for Chris, we'll have time for Q&A and a bit of dialogue at the end. So feel free to put it in the Q&A function or in the chat, and we'll save all of them to ask Chris.
Cool. Well, I go just get started. I'm having trouble talking this morning too. I think I've had too much coffee.
Right.
So. All right. There we go. So, Sionagad, Chris Lagodo. Hey everyone, my name is Chris Skillern. I'm a type designer and citizen of the Cherokee Nation from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thank you so much, Lynn and Juan, for having me, and Type Electives for having me. Lynn and Juan were both teachers of mine at Type West, and it's really cool to be with them both today and to be with you all and talking today. So thanks for having me. So as Lynn said, I run a small foundry called Tulsi Type that has not a lot of releases right now. They're coming, but you'll see today what's been keeping me so busy. So if you're not familiar with me, I like to think of my foundry and my work in general as sort of biscriptural, because while I definitely make your bread and butter Latin fonts, I'm also deeply committed to designing type for the Cherokee Syllabary. And today I want to talk about Cherokee Type, and specifically establishing a solid foundation for Cherokee Type, which is sort of the long-term project that I'm invested in. So I was going to use the metaphor of a house for this, but I'm not all that fluent in things that have to do with construction. And our house, at least, is constantly shifting with the Oklahoma soil, so not all that solid exactly. So instead, let's talk about bones. Everybody has bones. Even letters have bones. The thing about bones is that by and large, they don't determine how you look, but they're responsible for getting you into the general shape of a human or a dog or a dinosaur or whatever you may be. And yes, these are all anatomically correct skeletons here. Similarly, the bones of a letter A give it its well-established form. And on a larger scale, the bone structure of the Latin alphabet makes it recognizable as the Latin alphabet, regardless of whatever musculature is built around it to torture the metaphor. Because these bones, these skeletons, are so well established, we also know that, that these little guys, serifs, are not bones. They're cute little accessories that a letter wears sometimes. Now let's look at some characters from the Cherokee Syllabary, and I'll ask you some questions. So is this a bone? Is this a bone? Should this be a squiggly bone, or is it more of a jagged hook bone? The point I'm trying to make is that despite what you might expect, the bone structure of the Cherokee Syllabary isn't especially well established. In fact, nothing about the syllabary, typographically speaking, is especially well established compared to a script like Latin. I've given talks in the past about how, despite a rich 200-year history of Cherokee printing, the look of the syllabary is still sort of stuck where it started. So for a quick overview, this is Sequoia. Sequoia invented the syllabary by breaking it down, the sounds of I really can't talk this morning, by breaking down the sounds of the Cherokee language into 86 distinct syllables. And then he drew a symbol for each. So the resulting writing system brought immediate and almost universal literacy to Cherokee people when he introduced it in 1821. This is what his original designs looked like, very intricate and calligraphic. But just a few short years later, the syllabary made the move to metal type. And for that to be possible, these kind of intricate and calligraphic designs had to be simplified and redesigned. So this is what the redesigned characters look like, quite a bit different in most cases. People were still able to read these, though, and these became the standard forms for both print and handwriting. Today, this is what people recognize as the syllabary. And thanks to the tireless efforts of those in the Cherokee language program in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the syllabary is accessible on every platform, from Windows machines to Macs and iPhones to Android devices. Despite all of that, though, full-featured and comprehensive typographic representations of the syllabary are still scarce. There's only a handful of Cherokee fonts currently available, and many of them include some disputed or confusing character forms. So take Digawali, for instance. You see this used around Cherokee Nation quite a bit. But the oo, check out the oo. Here's how it should look. Digawali's oo. I'm getting my slides out of order. On the right is how it should look. Digawali's oo looks more like a na. This can create problems for readers, obviously. Also, it's a yay looks kind of like a B, whereas yay is actually closer in form to a beta. The Cherokee Nation primarily uses Google's Noto Sans Cherokee, which does well with the forms, but which until recently didn't include numerals or punctuation. I should stress that it does now. And I think Noto is pretty good overall, but this is not uncommon for Cherokee fonts. Many of them are incomplete in one way or another, whether lacking a lowercase or an accompanying Latin, or extra styles for hierarchies or emphasis, such as multiple weights and italics. To torture the metaphor again, people making Cherokee fonts just aren't assembling a full set of bones. So, additionally, in conversations I've had with them about the typographic needs of the language community, Roy Boney Jr., who's the former manager of the Cherokee language program and who's now with Cherokee Film, and Jeff Edwards, who's also part of the program, told me that they want to see more implementation of Cherokee lowercase. Cherokee became bicameral, which means it added a lowercase with Unicode 8.0, mainly to ease the reading experience when the syllabary is set alongside Latin text. But to date, only Noto Sans and Mark Jammer's Forias have included Cherokee lowercase. Okay, so that's the preamble. As a way of kind of talking about my practice and the work that I'm trying to do, I want to start with the project that I just finished, which was about 2.5 years in the making. So in late 2022, the wonderful folks at Typotech invited me to lead the Typotech Cherokee project, which was an initiative to create a new suite of typefaces for the Cherokee syllabary. As someone who tends to focus on display type, I was excited by the potential this project presented because it was an opportunity to address a different and even more basic need for the language, and for me to kind of flex some different muscles. So after talking through all these issues that I mentioned, we decided our goal should be to design the most complete syllabary fonts possible by aiming to use the proper forms for all the characters, including a full lowercase design for all the characters, designing true italics for lava, obliques for November and October, and offering a full range of weights and widths. So like a really robust set of fonts. And our hope is that the resulting typefaces are not only useful for modern typesetting, but that they can provide that solid foundation that I was talking about for Cherokee type moving forward. So with these goals in mind, I began the project by trying to the best of my ability to decide on the proper forms for each of the syllabary's 86 characters. Going back to bones here, I wanted to start with November, the sans serif design, so I could sort of settle on the skeletons. I don't know if anyone has really made a true Cherokee sans before. Even Noto sans actually has serifs. So the historical models are all serifs. So this took some thought and some work. The first thing I did was make sort of a chart comparing how all certain characters look in different fonts. Then I had a meeting with Tipotech to talk about possibly conducting a survey. And they heard me out, and then they told me very politely, I think you're overthinking this, if you can imagine. I think I overthink everything. And they said, you can make the educated call here and then ask for feedback. And that made sense to me. So fortunately, I stand on the shoulders of giants here. So Cherokee language revitalizationists like Durbin Feeling, Roy Boney Jr., Joseph Erb, Jeff Edwards have put years of work into better understanding what the language community expects from the syllabary. And this image in particular was helpful to me in deciding on the correct sans serif forms for November. Several years ago, Joseph Erb and Roy Boney asked advanced speakers in the community what they look for in the design of each character, and they arrived at these essential forms. So as evidenced by these skeletons, many of the elements that a designer might be tempted to view as serifs are actually essential to the glyphs themselves. Jeff Edwards was also kind enough to give me some charts he made that sort of break down what currently available Cherokee fonts have gotten right and what they've gotten wrong. And that was really helpful too. So with these resources in hand and drawing on my own knowledge and experience of the syllabary, I was able to design a first draft of November that met with the approval of Roy and Jeff. So here's the first draft of the full Cherokee character set in the regular weight. The really challenging thing, though, with November was all the extra weights and widths. There's a lot of Cherokee characters that are really, really dense. So it makes it tricky to balance the positive and negative space and heavier weights, especially. There are also elements of certain glyphs that poke out to the side, which really complicates the generally tighter spacing of compressed and condensed widths. The weight issues just took some finessing and lots of hours of tinkering. As for the spacing issues and the narrow widths, I chose to magnify some of the protruding elements and shrink some others to minimize the gaps of negative space in words. Again, really helpful to have an understanding of the essential forms to do this. So here's the full range of weights and widths for November. Nothing this extensive has existed for Cherokee until now, so I'm super excited about this. And here's all of the weights and widths for the italics, or obliques, really. That's a new thing to have too, is obliques for Cherokee. And then once I had all the drawings done for every part of November, we could do the rounding and the cuts to make October Cherokee, which is a rounded sans serif, and November stencil Cherokee, respectively. So here are a few sample weights of those. It's going to get old to keep hearing this, but there hasn't been a rounded sans or a stencil font for Cherokee until now either, so this is exciting. This is me trying out the fonts on signage. Next, I got to work on Lava, which is a serif design. And Lava presented a different set of challenges. In some ways, the Cherokee serif design is kind of more straightforward because, like I said, all of the historical models are serifed. But there are still some questions, like how do we handle the contrast? What does a Cherokee true italic look like? And we really wanted to have a true italic for this one, as I mentioned. So to answer those questions, I went to the Helmerich Center for American Research, which is the research library at Gilcrease Museum here in Tulsa. And there I got to look at like hundreds of pages of Cherokee handwriting, mostly from the 1800s, all different kinds of handwritten letters and ledgers and journals. And I came away with a much deeper understanding of the essence of the Cherokee, of the syllabary's forms, and sort of a roadmap for Lava's italics, and for Lava Cherokee in general. In the collection, I found some handwriting samples that showed stroke contrast, or stroke modulation, which I hadn't seen before, and that helped me to define the contrast in some of the tricky characters. And here is the first full draft of Lava's Cherokee's regular weight. Overall, the serif forms were easier to design because, like I said, I could draw on scans of original metal type as well as from existing Cherokee typefaces, which are almost all serifs. So my goal with this one was to aim for a design that was really clean and easily readable. The primary reason for my research, though, as I mentioned, was to design a true italic for lava. So I really wanted to find handwriting samples that felt fluid and consistent. And that's why I went back to samples from the 1800s, because I wanted to find samples from a time when it was heavily in use in handwriting. And so everything felt natural. So in the samples I found, I borrowed a few characteristics to kind of build a cohesive italic from. Fortunately, I found this really long manuscript that provided everything I needed. I took note of a few of the characteristics. I settled on a few for the italics, like lower branching from stems, entry and exit strokes on certain characters, and more kind of exaggerated swooping curves. I didn't want to make any really dramatic changes because I wanted to make sure that the characters were still recognizable to the average reader. Now, this is something I can't say is a first because Mark Jamra actually made an incredible cursive italic for his Cherokee typeface Forius. So I'm following his footsteps here and got some great feedback from him along the way too. So here are some sample characters showing the differences between the uprights and the italics. I think personally the resulting design flows more like an italic and sits pretty well alongside Lava's Latin italics. Here's another look, and this one includes the lowercase. And as I said, every typeface in this collection has lowercase. As I mentioned, Cherokee became bicameral with Unicode 8.0. In practice, though, most Cherokee text is still set in all caps. Lowercase does serve an important purpose, though. It helps the syllabary characters sit more naturally alongside Latin when Cherokee and English are set in the same paragraph or text, as is often the case. So there's precedent for this too in like old samples of Cherokee printing where a printer would like basically use a smaller point size, almost like a lowercase. At first, I thought about differentiating the lowercase by incorporating like some ascenders or descenders or something, which some people have suggested before. But ultimately, after talking to some Cherokee users and considering how that would affect legibility, I decided against that. So instead, the lowercase characters and the final typefaces are smaller versions of the capitals, just like slightly wider and spaced more generously for easier reading. I think the lowercase helps just in general, even when text is all Cherokee. So here's how Cherokee is usually set. This would be all caps. And here's the same text with lowercase, which I think is a little bit easier on the eyes, especially in a longer block of text. And yeah, so that's the project. It came out last month, I think. I can keep track of time, but I think it was last month. It's incredibly extensive and it was a massive undertaking for me. And I'm just really hopeful that we're providing some good bones, as it were, for these can be useful for language revitalization efforts going forward. On a personal level, research and work like this helps me tremendously because it gives me a foundation to build on. I can take that more robust understanding of the syllabary and I can use it to branch out in all sorts of other directions. So, for instance, here's one of my designs. I call this typeface Afternoons. And it's sort of a bouncy and fun sans built on the understanding of those underlying forms. One of the things I wanted for Afternoons was a really heavy weight. And for that, you really need to know which elements are essential and which you can de-emphasize, which, if any, you can kind of discard because I'm trying to fit everything into a very tight space here. And here's a look at my typeface Chokecherry, which is available on future fonts, which is kind of riffing on those italic forms that I got from handwriting and sort of making them upright. This one is kind of respectively taking some liberties, but that's the thing. The more syllabary type I design, the more comfortable I am kind of pushing things a little further. Because again, once you have a solid understanding of the root forms, then you can start branching off in all sorts of different directions. You can push the forms a little further, as long as you know what it takes to keep them recognizable, if that makes sense. And this is where it gets really exciting for me because I can see all the various possibilities on the horizon. And then this is the really cool project, Lynn mentioned that I got to do recently. Cherokee Film has made a Cherokee language dub of Amazon Prime's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And they invited me to make the Cherokee title font for it. So this was really fun, a really fun kind of puzzle to solve to make a Cherokee that's based on like Trajan columns, kind of Roman capitals, and proportions and things like that. It's a full font with uppercase and lowercase Cherokee, as well as Latin and punctuation. And from what I understand, the Cherokee Film intends to release this for download whenever the series comes out. So that's exciting too. I'm also working on this sort of angular calligraphic sans that has a bunch of weights, and I hope to be putting this out soon. I want to work more on making a script based on handwriting forms. So this is the start for that. There's no Cherokee script that exists yet. I'm working on a Cherokee bubble font, which a lot of people ask for and which is right up my alley stylistically. So this is fun. And I'm also making this sort of Tuscan wood type inspired Cherokee font that started as a collaborative poster project with Jan Ballard from TCU. And I'm doing all this because everybody deserves display type. And I love display type, and I love the syllabary, and I want to see more expressiveness in Cherokee type. So that was maybe longer than I intended, or maybe not. I don't know how long that was. Anyway, Wado, thank you all so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. That was so, so good. And just a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A function. And, we'll ask Chris these burning questions soon. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much. Like, again, that was super fascinating. And then, as always, like, it's also amazing to see the range of design voices that you have across all your designs, which is, first of all, like eye candy. So it's such amazing things to see. And also to hear like the background of like how like concerned you are about like what is like the essential form versus like what you can experiment with. I guess like I have a question for you, which is you mentioned that like as you get more comfortable with like your research and like designing more as time goes on, like what can be a bone versus what can be more like decorative. Like, can you speak a little bit like more to that? Is it like having the confidence to experiment more, or is it just like you're building up a giant like vocabulary of what the possibilities people have done over the years? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a little bit of all of that, because
Mhm.
just after looking at so much handwriting and type of different kinds over all these years of research, I've kind of got an understanding in my mind of what a character should look like. And like with Choke Cherry, my future font font that I was showing, I know where I can add flourishes and where I can't to keep it recognizable, if that makes sense. Where if I add a flourish, it's not going to look like it's supposed to be part of the form. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah. I guess like just to add on to that, like I noticed like when we're comparing like large chunks of text, that even how like the negative spaces like exist as a texture seem to vary like a lot. Like are those like also like a part of what you're talking about when you're talking about like the bones, like where the bones like don't have to be or anything of that
yeah,
sort?
yeah, definitely. That's another thing that I have been trying to kind of get my eyes used to. Because with Latin, you know that like there are going to be larger gaps of negative space on either side of the T or something like that, and your eye is used to it, and it's used to looking for that. So um, I'm I'm trying to train my eye to be more used to the large gaps that appear next to. I don't know if I have any examples here. No. Anyway, there's some characters with like little things that stick out up into the side, like this here, this
Mm.
nah, which is like a O with like a sort of jagged hook on the side of it. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking exactly.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Or like even in the last line, like we can see like next to the hook, like there is like a lot of like space above and under
Yeah.
the hook, and so forth. And I'm assuming like that in itself is something that I'm assuming you're always really conscious about when you're designing spacing and, the forms and all of those things.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm still trying to kind of work out the best way to design those parts, because some certain styles do leave a pretty big gap of negative space there. Um,
I mean, to
I
me,
also kind of have the tendency to space a little bit tightly. And I probably need to work on that. But a lot of Cherokee fonts are spaced a little bit uh, more wide because of those elements that stick out to kind of add negative space between the other characters also. But that just feels too disjointed for me. So I'm trying to find a way to have my tight spacing and also have all that white space feel okay.
I want to piggyback on that because this idea of spacing tight versus loose and the gaps, it's our eyes are trained in a particular way to examine Latin type, but it's obviously not Latin type. So should we be judging it to the same standards? And as Lynn was saying, maybe what are gaps? Maybe are different ways of understanding spacing. Um, I also like tight spacing, but at the same time, maybe if this is not meant to be so tightly spaced, maybe you can do similar, maybe explore different shapes. I do have a question related to that, though, more in the sense of it's taking you, a lot of time and learning to be able to achieve this level of, I don't know, mastery, I would say, because there aren't that many people in the typographic world that can actually do this to the level of expertise that you have. So I'm also curious about, like, how do you know, as you're exploring new ground and exploring new designs, like, who do you talk to like, see if you're still within the bounds of legibility, or is there a community of Cherokee type designers or Cherokee knowledgeable people, or is it just most within the nation themselves? Like, how does that process work for making this typeface, and also maybe for also pushing yourself to maybe different areas of your practice?
That's a good question. Yeah, uh, I have a group of people that I always go to for feedback who are people that I've gotten to know over the years that work. Most of them work in the language department in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is the Cherokee Nation capital, just about an hour from here. And so I can run down there and see them if I need to, or I can email them stuff, and they're always really quick to respond. But they are, I talked about them a little bit. It's Roy Boney and Jeff Edwards and a few other people who have actually worked a ton with the syllabary in the past and getting it all supported by Unicode and all the different operating systems and things like that. So they have a lot of experience with the syllabary and know what to look for. And so, yeah, they are always really will give me feedback whenever I ask. And yeah, and then I'll show it to random people sometimes and make sure it's legible. So
we have a awesome question from the audience in the chat. This question asks something very important, very typographic, so a very nerdy question. So the question is, it seems like Cherokee lowercase is really like what we might think of from a Latin perspective. It's a small capitals. Are there any lowercase forms that diverge from the capital forms?
So Cherokee lowercase is kind of like a modern invention. And more of like, it's more like Cherokee taking on a Latin convention almost. But the real point of it is to make it, since Cherokee and English are set together, almost any time that you see Cherokee, you also see English in the same text. So to make the text kind of more uniform, it helps to have, you can just call them small caps, because Sequoia never designed a lowercase. No one else has ever designed like a unique lowercase. And the precedent for our lowercase is just old samples of Cherokee printing where people use like a smaller point size of type set alongside the English to make it fit together more easily. So yeah, I don't know. Some people have suggested making like a unique lowercase. Michael Everson, who did the Unicode proposal for the Cherokee lowercase, had some suggestions for where to add ascenders and descenders, but those haven't really caught on. And I didn't want to make anything that's too hard to read or unrecognizable. So I just stuck with like the classic kind of small caps configuration.
Yeah, related to that, like when you were coming across like all these different manuscripts and piece of handwriting, did you notice that there is a big range of like people's handwriting, or were they more uniform than what you would see in Latin?
A lot of the ones that I saw in the research library, there were some kind of commonalities across the different samples, and those were the ones that I kind of zeroed in on to help me decide on what should be like the proper form for these things. But there are some really wildly different interpretations of handwriting that people have done. And I didn't put it in this slideshow, but I made a handwriting font with Jeff Edwards at one point for one of the translators that works at the language department for his handwriting. And he learned, it was like a community specific handwriting style that he learned from his grandmother, because that's how women in their community wrote. And it's this really, really unique, difficult for me to read, like double barred kind of handwriting, but it's really beautiful. And that's something I want to see more of. I want to see more, uh, variation in Cherokee handwriting, because I know it exists, and it's probably just in different communities like that. So
Yeah, like that's really cool because I know like in for I guess I'm thinking of more like European history where like certain figures like set up like writing schools and they all like have this like style that they're trying to impart upon all their disciples and students and such. And then like, and then like regional styles like appear. And I'm assuming it's something like that, right? Like certain community members are, exchanging like written pieces and, handwriting can be contagious. I think as a kid, like you see something that's like cool and you want to emulate it. And so
yeah.
maybe there's like something like that there. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I think there definitely is. I want to see. I want to just like get around and see some more handwriting from people in different communities. I think definitely like at the language center in Tahlequah, they have an immersion school where
Mm.
kids learn syllabary alongside the language and everything. Um, and I think the handwriting there all kind of follows a similar model, because they have these sheets that they work from to kind of learn handwriting like you would learn uh, Latin handwriting.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, that's something I want to look more into though, because I think that's really cool.
There are some really cool questions in the Q&A, so I'm gonna jump into that right away. The first one is a question that says, the many indigenous scripts remain unencoded or exist in uncertain inactive states or handwritten states. How can one contribute to preserving and revitalizing such scripts as a designer? It's a big question.
Man, that's a good question. Maybe for someone smarter than me, but I think a lot of it depends on if it has uh, Unicode support for one thing. Um, uh, I think most scripts do. Well, I wouldn't say that. Not most scripts. There's plenty of gaps in Unicode. So I guess one thing you could do is like work on a Unicode proposal if it's a script that doesn't have one. Um, but then, yeah, I would just recommend researching uh, as heavily as you possibly can into it, and kind of get obsessed with it and draw it a lot and talk to community members if you're not part of the community yourself, and make sure you're getting feedback from them, to make sure that everything's legible. And yeah,
Yeah, I like to think of Unicode as a work in progress. So it keeps
yeah,
evolving, and yeah, I love that advice. There's someone out there hopefully that's working on something that you can help support that project, specifically from people within that community that are already building that infrastructure. Especially as a designer that's no native to that script. Um, the second question is very interesting, and I'm curious to see if you know a little bit about this. So cartoonists often make custom fonts for their own handwriting. Um, Obviously, maybe to save time, to add personality for many reasons, for the purposes of lettering. So, do you know any Cherokee cartoonists have gone in that direction?
oh man. Um, I know several Cherokee artists who have really distinct syllabary styles they use in all of their artwork. Um, Kelly Gonzalez is a really great artist whose work can be very illustrative. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for there. Um, Very graphic style, I guess. And she has a really cool handwriting syllabary style that she uses in all of her work. And Roy Boney does the same thing in his work. He's a really, really amazing artist and uses a lot of syllabary. I don't know specific comic artists. I did have someone reach out recently and ask for a Cherokee comic font for a comic that they're working on, but just like, in a classic kind of comic book lettering style. So yeah. But yeah, I want to reach out to some of these people and say that I can make a handwriting font for them, because I think it'd be cool to preserve their different styles and in font form.
Yeah, I mean, now following, picking up, so jumping on that question as well, like signage people, sign painters, they develop their own alphabets. Anyone who wants to develop their own tone of voice basically figures out a way to make that more systematic so they can replicate it and still keep their own point of view. So, have you found, other than handwriting, like other alphabets by sign painters, just people, trying to make those kinds of signage in their own voice?
For Cherokee, I guess. No, not really. I haven't seen much of that. Um, I see some like vernacular lettering around in like Tahlequah and places like that, but nothing in like a what I would call a signature style or anything like that. I don't know of any people who are just like straight up sign painters who are making like Cherokee signs, but I think that'd be cool. I did have someone at Cherokee National Holiday last year when I was giving a talk, um, who was a sign painter who was interested in making a Cherokee sign painting font. But we haven't gotten around to that yet. That's a whole different can of worms.
Do you feel like there is like more like language revitalization efforts than like before? Like, because I was actually very surprised in like a great way to see like your work dubbing the Rings of Power. And I was like, like, and I was like, wow, like HBO. It's like, is that like a part of a larger trend that we're seeing, or was that like a one-off, or like what are your take? What's your take on that?
Well, I can speak for the Cherokee Nation specifically. It's a major focus right now, both at the government level and for a lot of artists and activists just in general. But I keep talking about the Language Center. There's a pretty new building in Tahlequah called the Durban Feeling Language Center, which is just completely devoted to language revitalization, and it houses the immersion school, which they're just about to add grades to. And there's an adult master apprentice program there for people to learn the language. And a lot of the people who came out of the master apprentice program actually ended up being voice actors for the Cherokee dub of The Rings of Power, because you need people of different ages, and most fluent Cherokee speakers are elders. So a lot of the younger people coming out of the master apprentice program got to be voice actors in the Cherokee dub, which was really cool. But yeah, it's definitely a trend. That was the first project that Cherokee Film is doing for Amazon. They've got a partnership to do more in the future. Um, but The Rings of Power is like every episode is like an hour and a half long, so it's it's a huge undertaking. But yeah, it's awesome. It's a really exciting time for language work, because there's a lot of it happening, and I know it's happening in other communities too. So yeah.
Like that's really awesome to hear that like there's like a lot of it seems like there's a lot of interest from like the younger crowd, like, and is that like a big part of it as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people my age and younger are getting more interested in the language. Uh, it sort of maybe fell out of use in like our parents' generation to some extent, unless you're in a really tight community where everyone was speaking the language. But for especially like a person who grew up in an urban area like me, it's, it just kind of wasn't used. So the last person in my family who spoke it fluently was uh, it was my great grandparents' generation. So yeah, I think a lot of people my age and younger are getting more interested in learning it. And yeah, the Cherokee Nation also offers language classes to all its citizens. So that's like online based too. So that's a really cool thing too.
That's awesome. I mean, I don't want to take up the mic too much, Fawn. Did you have a question? I saw you muting.
Yeah, no, I do have a question. Because also like jumping onto like what the last question about what can designers do? Like, I'm just curious about like, let's say, our audience are people who are interested in letter forms, from linguists to actually type designers to people who are trying to get into type design. Like obviously, so some beautiful forms, and I'm just thinking like how can people get started? Like, is there anything online about the particular do's and don'ts, or just the basics? Yeah, just curious about that kind of material. Does it exist? Is it still being created, or is it something that you have to do? To put it together to share with others, so that folks can also maybe learn a little bit more about the Cherokee culture,
Yeah,
language, and through type design.
that is something that I talked about with Tipotech, that we want to kind of put some resources out there for things that we learned along the way in the Tipotech project, and sort of make it easier for people who are designing Cherokee fonts to have some more authoritative resources to go to. Um, and there has been talk amongst me and a couple of other Cherokee artists. There's actually Monique Ortman, who's a Cherokee artist and illustrator, or an educator, sorry, um, who made her own Cherokee font a couple years ago. She had the idea to make like a book about Cherokee, about the syllabary and the design of the syllabary, which uh, hasn't come to fruition yet, but I still think it would be a good idea or a cool thing to have. So yeah, resources are hard to find right now, but there are people, hopefully, and hopefully myself working on putting them out there. So one of these days.
Yeah, as far as like you can like sense from like the community, like um as like I guess like those kind of education materials are like getting put together, is there like an intended like ideal audience for it? Because I do know that when it comes to language revitalization efforts, like sometimes it's like we want to get everyone in the community who are already in the community but might not be into it, like into a different space, versus like looking outwards, I mean, like other people outside of this community should, this is what the resource is intended for, right? Like sometimes that can be attention as well. Like, do you have like any sense of like what that is?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't gone that deep into it yet, so I'm not really sure what the response would be. Um, I think the priority is always to kind of get people in the community to work on this sort of stuff, which I would love to get more Cherokee people interested in making type, and hopefully I can. Hopefully people will get interested in it. But yeah, there are also other designers who do make some Cherokee fonts, and um, they usually reach out to me or Roy or Jeff or someone else for feedback. And I think I lost the thread of the question, actually.
No, I guess like is like, I guess like I just wanted to get like a sense for whoever might be like watching the webinar, or like maybe like a recording like later on, like if you're not if you don't have a connection personally with the Cherokee Nation, like is it like appropriate even for like people to sort of like try designing these, or is it more of like you can be educated but also you should like at the core of it, like if you're doing anything professional, you should always like reach out to people who are in the Cherokee community like
Yeah,
first, Yeah.
yeah, I would absolutely say reach out to people in the community and people in the know first, um, and kind of get their blessing to start working on things, or just show them what you're working on and get feedback and make sure it's appropriate and legible and useful. I think so. I think it was in 2011. Roy Boney and Jeff Edwards gave a talk at TypeCon, just asking for more Cherokee fonts, and so I think when a language is at a certain level of need, they need to take whatever they can get. And I don't mean that like we'll just take whatever's off the scrap heap or whatever. I mean, well-made fonts and things like that. But I think at that point they were asking for help from whoever was willing. And then Mark Jammer stepped up and made Forius, which is a really great Cherokee font that is in use a lot in Tahlequah now, in the museums and in all kinds of different materials and things like that. So
yeah, I think it's important to like, keep a tab on like what the heartbeat of like the ask is, right? So I think, it's wonderful that you brought that up because, what might have been the case like years ago is maybe like not the case now, right? Like as like more people get it, but it's a good problem to have and a good shift to be having, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely much more happening now than there was at that point, which is great.
I gotta say, I love the display typefaces you've been sharing. They all look fresh and very beautiful, especially with the Cherokee language.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like that, and I just like. I wish you could tell us when they'll be released so that folks can license it from you.
That's right. That's right.
This is the one I'm going to try to release next. Hopefully within like the next few months. It's got like 5 different weights, so I'm trying to finish up the other weights right now. And this one is a long ways off. This one is getting a little bit closer. This one is pretty close. And then I have 1 or 2 others that are fairly close also. So within the next, I want to have like maybe half dozen out by sometime next year if I can.
No, hopefully, and when you do, please let us know. We're happy to like help spread the word. These are really awesome.
Awesome, I appreciate that.
We're coming close to an end. So I just want to say thank you so much, Chris, for everything you've shared. By all means, please if you have anything else you want to plug, please tell us. Or you can also, put it online and let us know. We can help you spread the word.
No, I don't think so. I think I dumped everything into the presentation. But yeah, thank you all so much again for having me. I really enjoyed it and really appreciate you all having me. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I also dropped Chris's feature fonts profile in there, so you can definitely go there. There's a little button called watch, so you can stay subscribed to newest releases that might be coming out from Tulsi Type, and of course subscribe to all the socials. I mean, it's like it's very exciting. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like always like really, it must be like a lot of pressure sometimes. Like I guess like as like someone who like it's been years, but like sorry, I'm trying to formulate a question. I guess like, do you feel pressure, Chris, about like being an expert in an area where there are not a lot of like pre-existing experts that you can like draw on? Because I know you already mentioned that like you're standing on the shoulders of giants, but compared to like Latin type, like per se, where there has been like someone to point to for decades and centuries, like it's like not so much in like your case. And I know like you're like doing so much amazing work with all these amazing people, but like do you ever feel the pressure of like a small community?
It's hard for me to think about trying to like myself as an expert. There's no other Cherokee person making type. So I guess technically I would be the person, but it's weird. It's weird to think about myself in those terms. But yeah, I do feel pressure to get things right. And uh, I really just want it to be, I want the work that I do to be a positive thing for the language community. And so the more I put out there, the more my hope is to see it getting used and to get positive feedback from it. And every time I show it to people, like at Cherokee National Holiday a couple of years ago, I got some great feedback. So, and everyone's asking for more, more different styles, which is always encouraging to me. So, yeah, I feel a lot of pressure, but I'm hopeful at the same time.
Awesome. How can like people, how can the average person like help out with all these efforts? Obviously, going to support you at like feature fonts and all these places. Is it like writing to HBO customer service and demanding more Cherokee dubs? Like what, what can folks do to like help out in all this effort for everybody in the community there?
Yeah, just like follow uh follow Indigenous artists in their work, and you know, buy artwork from artwork and fonts from Indigenous artists and stuff. I think that's the most useful thing, the most helpful thing, and just be supportive. But yeah, I don't, I don't know what else.
Yeah, directly supporting folks. I guess that's always a solid answer. Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Go support Chris right after this. Go get his fonts and give him a lot of love online. And if you see him in person, give him a big hug. Um, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you all for being here. We'll upload the recording as soon as it's ready. So it should be ready by the end of the weekend. And thanks again. Hopefully, I'll see you next week for the next talk in the lecture series. And have a great morning, great afternoon, great evening, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
all
you
so
so
much.
much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.